17 years old, most of us are worrying about pimples, parents, and getting through high school. This teenager, she wrote a brutally honest, hilariously raw story about sex and surf culture that shocked the nation, scandalised parents, and even had strangers ringing her mother's phone to tell her she'd raised a slut. Schools banned it, parents forbade their kids from reading it, which, of course, only made teenagers desperate to smuggle it under their desks. That book, Puberty Blues, didn't just cause outrage, it became a cult classic, was turned into a hit film, and decades later revived as a TV miniseries. Most people would have apologised, hidden the book under the bed, tried to forget it ever happened, but she leaned in, whether it's puberty, motherhood, or menopause. She later said, "I always write the book I wish I had when I was going through it." That line has been her battle cry ever since. From Fetal Attraction to Mad Cows to How to Kill Your Husband, she's made a career out of breaking taboos with punchlines. Today, her novels are international bestsellers, translated into 17 languages, adapted into film, TV, opera, and even a cocktail at the Savoy Hotel. She calls herself a mischievous feminist hornbag. We call her the woman who proved humour can be sharper than any sword. This is Why Do You Think You Could Do That? I'm Sam Penny, and this is Kathy Lette. Kathy, welcome to the show.
I'm so honoured to be called a hornbag. Thank you. That's the ultimate accolade for me.
That's absolutely fantastic and quite all right. And I'll call you a hornbag as much as you like. Now, Kathy, I'm really looking forward to this episode because you've had such an amazing career to date. But obviously, everybody starts off as an ordinary person. I want to go right back to the start. Every good book obviously starts at the beginning. So where did your story start? What were you like as a kid growing up in Sydney?
Gosh, well, it couldn't have been a more ordinary upbringing. You know, my mum was a teacher. My dad worked in, he was an engineer. He worked in optic fibre. His name was Mervyn. We used to call him Optic Merv, obviously. I've got three sensational sisters. And I mean, what a great way to grow up with three incredibly funny, fabulous, feisty, inbuilt friends. You know? And I suppose it was interesting when you started asking me about where your courage comes from and everything. I think if you've got that sisterhood around you the whole time and a very loving but also very clever and professional working mum, that's a pretty good role model and a pretty good support system. I always say that women are each other's human wonder bras, uplifting, supporting, making each other look bigger and better. And having three sisters, I mean, oh my God. So, you know, when they say, oh, whenever there's trouble, the wagons circle, they're not wagons. These are armored tanks I had around me at all times. And I guess that's what gave me the courage to stand on my own two stilettos and not wait to be rescued by some knight in shining Armani. And my mother having a career was really unusual. How old are you, Sam?
I'm 51.
51. Well,
so I was born 73.
They're pretty different for your generation, but in my generation, my mother was the only, out of all my school friends, I had the only mother who worked, not just worked, but a vocation, a passionate teacher. She went on to be a principal. She was a principal of about 8 different schools. Everybody loved her. She was an infants and primary school headmistress. So, you know, that's a pretty good role model to have. So I guess that's where
That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. And, you know, when I met, this is how ordinary my upbringing was. When I met Barry Humphries, when I was probably about 19 or something, because don't forget, I got kind of famous at that age, which is pretty unusual. So I was at Melbourne, a Melbourne comedy festival or something, and I met Barry Humphries there. And I remember saying to Barry, I think you invented me, because you know how Dame Edna has a daughter called Valmay, who's married to Mervyn, live in a blonde brick veneer in suburbia. My mother's name is Valmay, married to Mervyn. They live in a blonde brick veneer in suburbia. I said, am I a figment of your imagination? And of course, we became great friends at that moment. We stayed friends until the day he died. He just lived behind me in London. You know, every time we got home from overseas, he'd ring me up and say, because our houses backed onto each other, he'd say, Kathy dear, I'm poised at your rear entrance, or something like that. So, you know, it was really magnificently, gloriously normal upbringing. except that my parents were very adventurous. When I was 12, they decided to take their long service leave. Isn't long service leave a brilliant thing? Where when you've worked
Love
for,
it. I
I,
wish.
I don't think it's only Australia that has it, as far as I know. Where you get
I have no
paid,
idea.
if you work for the government, you get paid half your salary for a year to take a year off and refresh, to just go and after you've worked for 20 years or something. It's genius. So they
So you're
decided.
12. Where did your parents take you?
They took us out of school. We came to London, the four girls. My older sister was 13. I was 12. Then we had one who was maybe 8 and one who was 4. And we came and lived in London. Mum taught here. Dad, flew off to Scandinavia to learn how to get his explosives license. I sometimes think maybe he was a spy, actually. And we went to school here, and then we got in a camper van and went all around Europe. And then we went to America and flew across and drove across, zigzagged across America in a caravan, then came home. We were away for a year. And I look back now,
Wow.
they were insane. Have 6 of us in a tiny little camper van. And we did correspondence. We took our remember the School of the Air. Remember in if you live in the outback, you get something that was called correspondence school, where they sent you your work, your coursework. So we took all our work with us, and we were learning about the Leaning Tower of Pisa while looking at it. So it was kind of brilliant, but also insane. My mother looks back now and says, "What drugs was she on to even attempt this?" That was pretty special. So I hadn't thought about it till you've just asked me that question, but clearly they both have a big adventurous spirit, which obviously I've inherited. Yeah.
So you were only 12 when you went on this adventure. And then only about, 4 years later, you started writing Puberty Blues with one of your friends.
Yeah.
But during this period, were you a rebellious kid?
Yes.
Yeah, you've just had this amazing adventure across Europe and the US. Were you rebellious?
Oh God, yeah, because I was like a straight A student. I was school captain at primary school. I was sports captain. Like, I was just, my mother and father were so proud of me. They thought they had this kind of golden girl. And then I got taken hostage by my hormones at 13. Discovered boys, and then that was it. I went totally off the rails, sneaking out at night, meeting the boys in the panel van, going down to Cornell. We used to go and pull bongs in the, you know what bongs are. They still use bongs?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if they use that word.
I don't know. All I know is that all the suburban fathers couldn't work out why their garden hoses were getting shorter. They thought they were drinking. And I wrote an article about that for the Sun Herald once, about explaining why suburban dads, why their garden hoses were getting shorter. And it was raised in Parliament by Senator Boehm. We used to call him Bong on Boehm. And he got us, because we had a little column with my girlfriend. We wrote a column by the Salami sisters in the Sun Herald once a week, which was a kind of funny, subversive, irreverent look at teenage life, because we were only 19 and 20, I guess, when we were writing it. And he had this raised in Parliament saying that the Sun Herald was employing, girls who were teaching the youth of Australia how to do drugs. And we actually got the sack, but we had a fantastic editor called Max Such, and he sneaked us back into the Sun Herald, but without our byline, but all our little cult following knew where we were. So yeah, I guess I've always been pushing out the envelope, but not for any sort of not in a calculated way. It just comes naturally. I guess it's the Irish Celtic rebellious streak. Are you Celtic, Sam? What's Petty is an English surname, isn't it?
Yes, English. I think there's English, Scottish, Irish. I don't know.
Yeah,
There's everything that's white Anglo is in there, pretty much.
Well, I just did that show, Who Do You Think You Are, and worked out that I'm 50% Irish from Tipperary, and the rest of it is Scottish and Norwegian. So, but from the Norwegian side, I got the feisty feminists. Scandinavian women are so strong, and I could see feminists right back through my story. But from the Irish,
talking about feisty, Kathy.
Yeah.
You're 16, your mum's a principal at a school, your dad's an engineer. You proclaim to them that you're going to drop out of school and become a writer. Like, this sounds like it's definitely something in your genes.
It was traumatic, though. I mean, my mother particularly is passionate about education. And for me to, and I was still a straight A student, well, except for math. I always say Australian women are bad at math because we're always told that 6 inches is 10 inches, by the men. But anyway, yeah, it was very traumatic. And my mother was heartbroken when I left school. And I told her, I was already, with busking on the streets for a living. Can you imagine? And I used to, I came home from school one day when I was 15, and my dad goes, "Oh, how was school today?" And I go, "Oh, it was great." I just lied my head off. And he said, "That's interesting," because I was in Martin Place where the GPO used to be there. And I looked out the window at lunchtime and I saw you busking in Martin Place. I'd hidden my school uniform behind a rock, gone into town. But I think I was still being entrepreneurial. I was earning money. So, I mean, I was a horrible, horrible, horrible teenager in every single way. But when I told my mother and father I was writing this novel, and I said, "Look, it's pretty graphic about sex in the back of panel vans and whatever." I said to my mum, "Do you want me to write under a pseudonym?" I had a fantastic pseudonym, Sam. I was going to call myself Sue Denim. Come on, that's good.
Oh, that's brilliant.
But she was like, I remember she said,
for a 16-year-old, you just go, "Oh yeah, how genius am I?"
No. No. When I told her I was going to use a pseudonym, I remember she just said, "Oh, don't worry, darling. I don't think that book's ever going to get published." Of course she would say that. I'm 16. And then when it went on to be this overnight sensation, and it was a bit of a roller coaster ride to go from non-entity to overnight notoriety. And as you mentioned in your intro, my mum was getting not death threats, but the trolling of its day was anonymous phone calls. So she anonymous phone calls from people saying, "Call yourself an educator, a teacher when you've raised a slut like that," as you said, blah, blah, blah. And my mum is Protestant. She's still alive. She's beautiful. She's 94. My dad sadly died 10 years ago, but they went to different churches. Dad's Catholic, mum's Protestant. They'd go to their churches each week, and the congregation would be horrified that they'd raised this rebel girl. So I think mum didn't tell me that at the time. She only told me that not that long ago. So I think it was really hard for them. But I'd left home I left home at 16. So I wasn't dealing with it day in, day out. But and my dad didn't speak to me for about a year. He was so upset. But of course, we have a very loving family. So in the end, you know how my father started to, you'll relate to this as an Aussie bloke, Sam. When my dad was upset about Puberty Blues and when he was really scandalized, and he told my sisters she's out of the will. Not there was much money, but she's out of the will. And my sisters, even my little sisters, got together with me and said, "Don't worry, Kath, we'll share everything with you," which is so adorable. But anyway, after my dad hadn't spoken to me for quite a while, I then got he rang me he knew I'd bought a secondhand car, and he rang me to say, "Yeah, well, you better bring the car down so I can check the tire pressure and the carburetor." And I was like, "Okay." I took the car down and he fixed a few things on it. The next week he said, "You better come down so I can check the fan belt." Went down, checked the fan belt. And every time I went, he did more and more things on my car. Australian men show their emotion through the car, right? And I remember we had a really bad fight one day about I don't know what it was, women's rights or immigration or something. And I thought, "Oh no, we've lost all this ground we've made up." Because when a dad fixes your car, it's like, that's like writing a Shakespearean love poem. And then we'd lost all this ground. And then he said, just turned to me and said, "So, how many miles are you getting to the gallon?" And I was like, "Oh, phew, we're back on track." So dads relating to their daughters through their cars is a very Aussie thing. If your partner was here right now, she'd absolutely get what I was saying. Yeah. So
yeah, most likely. So what was it really that pushed you to become a writer to start off with?
Well, always loved writing. I used to win all the competitions at school. You know, I can remember winning my first literary competition, only a little school thing, when I was 8. And I loved writing. I loved creative writing, and I loved English and all that sort of stuff. But what motivated me to write Puberty Blues with my girlfriend was the sexism. Because when you're 13, I mean, you have no objectivity about what's happening to you. You think it's normal. You know, we thought it was normal for girls to be treated like a life support system to a pair of breasts. I mean, the terms for women was so brutal. We were bush pigs or maggots, or if you were good looking, you're a glamour maggot, for God's sake. The terms for sex were rooting, tooling, plugging, stabbing, poking, or meat injecting. You know,
Meat injecting.
Yeah, it was very brutal. But as I, you know, by the time I was 15, I was, you know, getting a little bit more objective about what was happening. I just thought, this is wrong that the women are treated like this. So I stopped being a surfy girl at 16 and started writing about the experiences with a kind of objective eye. And it was really, Gabs and I wrote Puberty Blues really for our other surfy girlfriends, to say to them, this is not right, that you're treated like this. It was like a manual to say to them, you know, you're not just a piece of meat. And we weren't allowed to surf. The end of Puberty Blues, where the girls go get a surfboard and go surfing. We really did that. We bought a surfboard. We went down to the beach. The guys, our boyfriends, were horrified that we dared to get a surfboard, and the girls were scandalized too, because, you know, they always take, in the patriarchal world, you always take the man's side. And we got dropped that day. We had so much fun. So that gave us the good idea for the end of the book as well. But
did you think it would become such a huge scandal, this book?
No. I mean, really, we just wrote it for our girlfriends. We used to send it out to our surfy girlfriends to give them a laugh, and to also make them look at how they were being treated and realize that it was deeply unfair and misogynistic and horrific. So so then we started sending it out. I read something there was a Nation Review. Is that what it was called? There was a kind of left-wing Fairfax magazine, and Anne Summers was writing in it. Do you know who Anne Summers is, Sam? You know Anne?
No.
Oh, she's a leading feminist, Australian feminist. And she wrote a piece about gang rape in Queensland. And I thought, oh, she'll understand what I'm writing about. So we sent her some of these chapters. And then we did decide to send this little book out we sent it to about 10 publishers who all rejected it. And then we sent it to Anne, who got it straight away. And she sent it to a small feminist publishing house in Melbourne called McPhee Gribble. And they immediately got it as well. And then they just did a tiny print run, and then it went boom. So it was, yeah, it was quite a wild ride there but it definitely was.
How many copies did you end up selling?
I don't even know. It's still in print. It was on the school curriculum for a while. It's a cult book. I mean, I'm really proud of it. I mean, when I'm walking around, I live in London 9 months of the year, and Sydney 3 months of the year, or about 6 and 4 now. But when I'm walking around London, I'll be walking around Piccadilly Circus, and some Aussie kids will see me and they'll call out across the road, "Go get me a Chico roll and don't take a bite out of it or you're dropped." Or they'll say, "Hey, back off, you fish-faced mole." I'm like, so proud of my contribution to the, you know, the vernacular. So yeah, it's a bit like, I don't know when you last read it, but it's a bit like straight Vegemite, no bread and butter. It's very astringent. It's very spare. And when I was writing that book, I know I was reading Ernest Hemingway at the time, because I'm an autodidact. It means self-taught. Obviously, it's a word I taught myself, Sam. But I was reading Hemingway at the time. And, you know, as you know, Hemingway writes in no adjectives, no adverbs, incredibly spare prose. And that was the influence on me. So, and just as well, I did write it that way because it's so easy to read. It's so accessible. And we know boys don't read fiction much, but that wasn't too demanding on them. So yeah, I'm really, really proud of it.
So there must have been a huge amount of backlash against you personally, and you were so young. I think you were 19 when the book was published.
Yeah.
How do you handle, going from nothing to notoriety, having so much backlash thrown at you? How do you cope with that when people just don't like what you're doing?
I think it was a bit scary, and I did run away from it for a little while, and I didn't write another book. I was, and also that book was so successful and so seismic that I decided I couldn't follow it up with anything. So I wrote plays. I did 2 plays after that. And then I finally got the courage at about age 24 to do another book. And I wrote a book called Girls' Night Out, which was about being a single girl around Sydney, trying to find a man who wasn't married or gay, or married and gay, being Sydney, or just a guy who didn't think monogamy was something you make dining room tables out of. So that was it was a discontinuous narrative. So the same characters turn up in different stories. It's like a kaleidoscope, but by the end they're all together on a big girls' night out. And it was a very honest look at life for women at that time. This is in the early 80s, because it seemed to me the double standards when it came to sexuality hadn't changed from the surfy days. Like a guy, when I was growing up, a guy who was sexually active was a love god, a stud muffin, a Romeo Lothario, a spunk rat, as we used to say in Cronulla, and a girl with the same sexual appetites, a slut, a tart, a tramp, a mole. And I still don't think that's changed today. I still think many men expect women to be so virginal. He's like, "Oh, darling, darling, am I the first man to make love to you?" To which the woman replies, "Of course. I don't know why you meant
Of course.
the same silly question." But anyway, so I was so appalled at that double standard that I was, I wrote Girls' Night Out as an honest account of what it was like to be a single girl in Sydney, and the hypocrisy, and also the way women were still being exploited by men. Like, this is an example, Sam. It's hard to imagine what it was like for women then, when there was no HR, there were no sexual harassment suits, there was no one you could complain to about the way you were being treated. And my first job interview, I already had a book out. I already had I had a column in the newspaper. Like, I wasn't green. So I was about 22, I guess, maybe. And I went for a job interview to start appearing on television I won't name names or talk about which channel it was, but I go for my job interview. There's 5 men in suits, some of them quite well known, sitting in a semicircle like that. I sit opposite them. And one of them whacks $10 on the table and says, "Oh, I bet I can make your tits move without touching them." And I go, "Oh, yeah, okay, whatever." He leans over, mauls my breasts, and said, "Ha, ha, 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 you won, there's the $10. So I said, "I bet you $20 I can make your balls move without touching them." I kicked him between the legs. Okay? He's rolling around in agony. The other guy, hysterical with laughter. They think this is the funniest thing they've ever seen. Got the job. Hello? But I thought today you would have a sexual harassment suit. But then there was no redress. All you could do, every day I went to work, when I worked at this TV station, I'd strap on a bulletproof bra before I walked in the door to deal with the double entendres, to deal with the comments about my looks, my breast size, my desirability. Was I rootable? That was the guys that go, "How rootable is she?" They'd rate you. And there was nothing you could do except fire back. So I learned quite young to give back as good as I got. So I call it the black belt in tung fu. So, and actually, Sam, I don't know who your partner is, but I'm sure she's strong and funny and feisty, because you are.
She's Italian and feisty, Kathy.
Well, the thing about women is that we aren't as physically strong as men, but we are more verbally dexterous. We use on average about 400 more words in our daily vocabulary. So, and when I go to schools and give talks to girls, I always say to them, if you go out at night and you're all dolled up, but you're underdressed unless you've got a couple of one-liners tucked up your trouser leg. Because if you do meet a misogynist and a bully, and he's saying sexist things to you, if you can take him down with a brilliant one-liner and make other people laugh at him, you completely take away his power. So it's a skill women should, cultivate, and it's part of our armory. So, and I did learn that.
But Kathy, like you're clearly a very articulate, smart woman, and for you, this wit comes so naturally. But for a lot of women and guys as well, when they're under the pressure, when they're being faced by derogatory comments, those kinds of things, trying to find the courage to say something as opposed to just shrinking and running away. How you clearly can, take the bull by its horns, whereas others might find it very difficult. So how do people overcome their fear of what you've been going throughout this period?
Mm. Well, for women, our problem is we're brought up to be decorative and demure. Whenever a man and woman start talking at the same time, or the research shows the woman always pulls back, we're far too polite. And the wonderful thing that happens to you post-menopause is you no longer care what people think about you. And women find this so liberating that they can actually say what they think for once. And the other thing that happens is that your estrogen goes down a bit. That's your kind of caring, sharing hormone. And your testosterone comes up a little bit. So you get a little bit more feisty, a little bit more selfish, a little bit more like a bloke, actually. I mean, we all take HRT, me and a lot of my girlfriends, and we take a little bit of testosterone. And now I know why men are so lucky. You've got this rocket fuel all the time, and it's just so wonderful to feel empowered and really not to care. So I guess the reason men, you were saying why don't men more often say what they think and stand up for themselves? I mean, I think a lot of them do, in my experience. But the ones who don't are probably the ones that I would like. They're probably the more empathetic, more beta male types but humor, you see, humor is the key. Humor is so disarming. And if you can disarm with charm, you've got a much better chance of getting your message across. So that's why, all my books, I think they're feminist, but I hope they're funny, because if you can make someone...
Well, they certainly are.
You can slip the medicine down more easily. And in social scenarios too, if someone is belittling you or making you feel bad, it's just humor is your best defense mechanism, And
so how does a woman then, channel Kathy Lette in her workplace where she is, coming up against the misogynist pigs? How do you have that bravery? How do you overcome that fear of standing up for yourself?
Well, first of all, I always say to women when they read my books, take the lines in the books. I mean, I love to write jokes and punchlines and one-liners and stuff. It just comes naturally to me. Take those lines, learn a few. Have a few ready so that you can, there's many, take as many as you want. They're there for you. They're like bullets, So learn some. And also you've got to keep saying to yourself, if not now, when? Tempest is fugiting like there's no tomorrow. So, be bold, be brave. You never know what's around the corner. I mean, I'm 66 now, or sexy sex, as I prefer to call it.
Sexy sex. Oh, yes. Glamorous.
But I often joke and say, oh, I'm having adventure before dementia. Not that I'm making light of dementia. It's a terrible disease. But you never know what's around the corner. Why wait another nanosecond to have fun and be fabulous? And especially to women my age, having their, once they've cut the psychological umbilical cord that kept them tethered to the kitchen by their heart and their apron strings for all that time. Women can, post-menopause, can put themselves first for the first time in their lives. So, I just want them to go forth and be fabulous and have a sensational second act, because as I said to you, if not now, when? Why wait another second? So the books I'm writing now, like The Revenge Club and HRT, Husband Replacement Therapy, and those kind of books. I wrote those. I'm writing these books to empower women, because whenever I read books about women my age, they're always, depressed and lonely, and they're living in some drab little flat with a cat, and they die of misery, and they finally get eaten by their cats, And I don't know any women like that. All my women friends are probably like your partner, like they're swinging off a chandelier with a cocktail between their teeth. And there's, it's the best time of your partner's obviously not. She's early. Is she 50s? In her 50s?
No, she's quite a bit younger.
Quite a bit younger. Well, anyway, the women, the women I know at this age are in the prime of their lives. And so that's what I'm trying to celebrate in my work now, is just as I tried to liberate teenage surfy girls from the strictures, that were holding them back. It's the same now with older women. I'm just trying to encourage them to be selfish for once, And
well, Kathy, that's what exactly this podcast is about. It's called Why Do You Think You Could Do That? Because it's all about making people recognize that this is the only life that they have. And, like the women you're talking about, if they've missed their first 60 years, they still have time to go out and have adventure, share, live the dream. You have to be selfish because it's not someone else's life. It's your life, isn't it?
Yeah, but also to women this age, I would say, don't let your guilt gland throb. Women have a guilt gland. Like mothers feel guilty about everything. But just think of what you've sacrificed. Think of the acres of toast you've buttered. Think of the flocks of lamb you've roasted. Think of the schools of whatever. What do you call? What's a collective noun for beef? Herd. The herds of
herd. Yeah.
You've baked. You women, mothers, we always put ourselves last. We always get the burnt bit of toast, and we'd never think of having a window seat on a plane, like first world problems. But, we're the lowest of the low in the family structure. So you don't need to feel guilty. You've earned it. You've earned it. So just go out there and do it. Yeah. And I've yeah, that'd be my main message. Because of also, I think for women, life is in 2 acts. The trick is surviving the interval, which is the menopause, which is pretty ghastly. I'm warning you, Sam. When your partner gets to the menopause, the only word you want to say to her is yes, whatever she wants.
Oh, Kathy, look, she's 40. She's already convinced she's going through menopause, and she uses it as every excuse for being angry at me.
Oh well, listen. Are you annoying? Do you do things? Did you help around the house? Are you actually a good partner?
Yes. Well, I would hope to think so, but sometimes you just feel that you're not.
Oh, well, let me tell you, the only thing women really want in bed is breakfast and a very good book. So if you bring her up breakfast occasionally and buy some good books to read, then I'd say you're ticking the right good partner boxes. But I was going to say about the second act is that, once women get through the menopause, which I always say is, it's awful. You sweat more than Donald Trump doing a Sudoku. But once you get through that, it is the best time of your life. No pregnancy scares, no period cramps. You've got all that tampon money to spend. It is, no one talks about the positive side that I'm telling you. It is liberating. So, yeah, I think women come into their true selves at this time of your life.
So your career, Kathy, 20 books, I think it is at the last count, is very much a mirror of your life. It's almost reads as an autobiography.
Yeah.
Why is it that you feel that you should write about your life, even though you changed the names here and there? Why do you feel that it's important to share each stage of your life in such an open way that you do, being a mother, autism with Jules, HRT, all these kinds of things, how to kill your husband, you've been married a couple of times. There's so much in there.
Alive. They're still alive, I hasten to add.
I don't worry, I forgot to put that part in. They are both still alive to this day that we know about.
Friends with it as well.
Why is that? Why is it such a mirror of your life?
Well, I always write the book that I have to wait till something's bubbling up in me that's making me crazy. And it's usually some part of a woman's life where she's being discriminated against and where life is not fair. And I always write the book I wish I'd had when I was going through something. It's like a manual for the next um, generation of women coming up behind me. So I'm a passionate feminist. I champion women in all of my work because it's still a man's world, Sam. You know, we don't have equal pay. We're getting concussion hitting our head on the glass ceiling, and we're supposed to clean it while we're up there. You know, then at home, we've got also not just the pay gap at work, we've got the domestic gap where we hit our head on the domestic glass ceiling, because I would say that even though women make up 50% of the workforce, we're probably doing about 99.9% of all the housework and childcare. And then there's also an orgasm gap. There's a pleasure gap. The research shows that for every 5 orgasms a heterosexual male has, a heterosexual woman has 1. So the only women who have pleasure parity with heterosexual men are lesbians, because, you know, it's only a slip. It's
Yeah.
only the tongue, Sam. But, you know, so it's just such an unfair world for women. And just to be serious for a minute, more serious, you know, women's rights are slipping back all around the world. I mean, in America, a woman born in America today has less rights than her grandmother did. You know, look,
Wow.
yeah, the abortion bans in America, in Afghanistan, women being erased, in Iraq, never has a haircut been so political. You know, sexual attacks are sky high, convictions, rape convictions, limbo low. You've got upskirting and stealthing and grooming and revenge porn. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So, you know, women have to be vigilant about our rights, especially for our daughters. We don't want them to inherit a worse world than we grew up through. The great success, though, Sam, I would say, is the Me Too movement. Because the thing about women is the sisterhood is powerful. Once we get together and we stand together and we speak out together, we can change the world. And I think those top water predators are still there. They've kind of maybe crawled under the rock a bit, but they're still around, but they're not as emboldened as they were when I was growing up. So, I mean, that's one thing that has changed for the better for women. And that's because we act as each other's human wonder bras, you know, uplifting and supportive. And
So
that's
how
why
do you use your voice, Kathy? You have such a great voice, and such a great personality, and someone who's so well known. How does Kathy Lette come out and try to change the world?
with humor. So as I was saying, you know, I wait till what's driving me mad, you know, what I've just been through, you know, the horrors of pregnancy and motherhood and, you know, trying to juggle kids and career without any domestic help and from my partner, all that kind of thing. Whatever's driving me mad, I then turn it into a hopefully funny, witty story that's also empowers women. And then I guess I always say if I have any gifts at all as a writer, it's putting into words what women might be thinking but not necessarily saying out loud, because I've got a lot of chutzpah and I'm bold enough to do that. And I also just write down the way women talk when there's no men around, because women aren't funny. I think our humor is quite different. I mean, you're obviously a charming guy, Sam, and I'm sure your male friends.
Thanks, Kathy.
I'm sure your male friends are funny, aren't they? That lovely Aussie humor. When you go to the pub, you have a great laugh. But you probably
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I think all my male friends are very funny and tell great jokes and stuff. At women's humor, we never tell jokes like that. Our humor's much more cathartic, confessional, self-deprecating, candid. I mean, we strip off to our emotional underwear in 3.6 seconds, and it's a psychological striptease that reveals all. We tell each other everything. And it's hilarious. When you go to girls like that, you have to be hospitalized from hilarity. And not a lot of men understand how funny women are because they talk over us. But if you could hear us when we're together, it is brilliant. So I just try and capture that on the page. And I think also, because my mother's a teacher and I was going to be a teacher like her mother before I, you know, my life took a different path. I do have a strong urge to educate. So I think I don't have a blackboard, but I have, you know, I have a biro and I have a book. I have, loose leaf foolscap paper. And I think I have a strong urge to sort of help women make sense of the world and help them find their way through it. Yeah. And if, to me, it's better than winning the Booker Prize is when a woman comes up to me at a book launch and says, one of whatever book it was got me through a really bad time in my life, or made me laugh. It cheered me up. It taught me a way to get through grief or heartbreak or rejection or whatever. I think, oh, that's so great. My job is done. I just find that so rewarding and enriching. So yeah. So luckily enough, I've been able to spin my spin my obsession into a career. So that's good, isn't it, Sam?
That's amazing. Was there ever a moment where you felt like you had gone too far?
No, I would say there's a moment where I wish I'd gone further. I wish. The one thing I never talked about was the fact that I have an autistic son, because I didn't want to invade my son's privacy. So I waited till he was 21 when I wrote The Boy Who Fell to Earth, and then the sequel, Best Laid Plans. But I wrote The Boy Who Fell to Earth, and even then I felt really nervous about, as I said, invading his privacy. But I showed him the book and he read it and he said, well, Mum, it's a celebration of idiosyncrasies, eccentricities and being different. And I was like, that's exactly what it is, Jules. Thank you. And with his permission, I very tentatively started to talk about the fact that I'd raised an autistic son, which I hadn't talked about ever. And it was so cathartic for me. But I also learned it's always better to shine a light into a dark corner. Only positive things came from doing that. And I wished I'd written it much, much earlier. Why did I wait so long? It was ridiculous when I've always talked so candidly about everything before. And, once you talk about something, it allows other people then to talk about their similar experiences. So it's enabling in all sorts of ways. And of course, I'm so proud of Jules. And I whenever I write about autism, I try and put and it is very challenging at times.
It's interesting, Kathy, because I think I read that when Jules was diagnosed, he was about 3 or 4 or so.
Yeah.
And how did you feel when he was first diagnosed? Was it a relief that it brought answers with it, or was it something else?
I think this was a long time ago. He's 30. How old is he now? He's 33, I think, or 34 or something. So this is a long time ago when autism was the A word. Like that was a diagnosis that dragged you down into the dark. Nobody talked about it. No one understood it. So I think parents of special needs kids, you go through various stages. The first stage you go through is denial, where you just can't believe it. You bankrupt yourself seeing every medical expert in the country. I mean, I hate to think how many doctors' children I've now put through university. And then you go through a stage of grief, where you blame yourself. You think, was it something I ate? Was it something I drank? Was it that one glass of wine in the final trimester? If only I'd feng shuied my aura like Gwyneth Paltrow, all would be well. And then you go through a stage of feeling a bit sorry for yourself, where you probably drink a little bit too much Chardonnay. And then eventually you just come to the conclusion that, this is the little person you've got and you've just got to do your best by them. And what Jules has taught me since then is there's no such thing as, there's no such thing really as ordinary. I would say there's just ordinary and, well, no, let me rephrase that. There's ordinary and then there's extraordinary. And people on the autistic spectrum have a literal, lateral, tangential logic, which is truly original and fascinating. And I think we all have to just stop trying to make autistic people act normal. We have to think outside the neurotypical box and celebrate them for their differences. Because, they're the garlic in life's salad. I love garlic. And without autistic people, human beings would never have got out of the cave. I heard this great guy, this autistic scientist talking on the radio one day, and he said, well, you people think we're weird the way we don't make eye contact and the way we don't make small talk. He said, we think you're weird the amount of time you spend being nice to people you don't even like. You know, and I thought that's so true. And if it wasn't for autistic people, we wouldn't have, you know, spaceships and I don't know, submarines and, you know, all the people who kind of pushed out the envelope in some way. They're probably on the spectrum. Like, you know, they think in years to come they'll be able to rewire the brain and change the autistic neurological pathways to more kind of regular, normal pathways. But if so doing, you know, you'll lose Van Gogh, Einstein, Orwell, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, all these amazing people who have made the world a better place. So, yeah, it's interesting. I just think we need to learn to celebrate people for all their differences and just be more embracing and tolerant and kind. And Jules has definitely taught
100.
me to be more compassionate and less judgmental, and that's a really good thing.
Is there a chapter of your life that you haven't written about?
Yes, one or two. One or two.
Are you going to share that? Or
Not right now. I'm thinking about writing a memoir, or I might have to call it a memoir because there'll be a lot about
Mama?
autism. Although Barry Humphrey said I should call it Let Bygones, which I really like. But the way I want to call, I think I might call it While You're Down There, because that works on so, you know, Australian downtrodden woman and, well, every other level you can think of. So I might have to save a few little chapters for that, Sam. I'm not going to do a psychological striptease for you right now, but maybe in
Well,
that
later then.
later, yeah.
So what do you like to do in your spare time when you're not writing books? Is it spending time with Jules, your daughter Georgina, catching up with friends? What does Kathy Lette do?
All of the above. I mean, I have a lot of energy, so I do go out. I never turn down an adventure. I mean, yes is my favorite word, and I would also say that to people who are feeling nervous about fulfilling their dreams or whatever, or ticking off their bucket list. I mean, just put a big word yes next to on your wall, and just try everything. Well, you never know where it will lead. So I go out a lot. I meet people. I'm like, I guess writers are like anthropologists on L plates in a way. So I've got a bit of a Margaret Mead. I go into Margaret Mead mode. So whenever I'm out, I'm always on the sniff for a character or a story or whatever. I find all quite exciting. I do a lot of travel. I'm a travel writer. So I get to luckily go right around the world. I love going out dancing with my sisters and my girlfriends. I just think embrace the fun because, you know, Putin or Trump could blow us all up tomorrow. I mean, the world's so precarious right now. So, and whenever I want to, when I'm about to turn down a pleasure or an adventure or whatever, I imagine those women on the Titanic who turned down the creme brulee. Imagine they're on the ice floe, freezing to death. They're thinking, I could have had pudding, and I didn't.
Yes, exactly.
For my waist.
Yep.
So yeah, just let that be your motto. I could have had creme brulee on the Titanic.
And I also saw on your Instagram you're getting into ocean swimming.
I've always
How do you like that?
Well, I'm a surfing
Have
girl.
you?
Yeah, I've always
Of
loved
course.
swimming. Yeah. We weren't allowed to
Getting
surf.
out blowing bubbles.
We weren't allowed to swim, although we had to wear crocheted bikinis. I mean, crochet, do you know what crochet? Just absorbs the
Yeah.
water. It goes straight to the bottom. No, I
Hang
love
down around your knees.
That's right, exactly. I love swimming. So one of my sisters is a really good swimmer, so we swim together all the time. Although I think the reason Australians swim so fast is because we're always looking for sharks. That's a great motivation to get your laps over quickly. So, but yeah.
Well, next time you come to Australia, you'll have to come out for Sam's Swim of Death.
Oh, God.
I don't know why my friends call it whenever they go swimming with me. Because we go out and swim under the shark nets and all those kinds of things. Heaps of fun, but it's heaps of adventure. So you'll have to come out next time. Come to Noosa, and we'll go do that.
I work in publishing. I have enough sharks in my life. Okay, I do not need to encounter them in the water as well. God, you are a brave and a bold one. No, That's not for me. In fact, I always make the man swim on the shark side. They used to make men walk on the side of the pavement where they might get splashed. I think the new
Where the
etiquette,
car is, yes.
the Australian etiquette should be the man must swim on the shark side. Yeah.
You know, interesting you say that, because that is exactly how we swim when we go out in the ocean. So, some of my friends, friends who are great swimmers. So I've swum English Channel and stuff like that. And my other friends, the girls that I swim with, they've also swum the English Channel. They're brave women, but they still put us on the ocean side where the sharks are.
And it's ridiculous because there's no logic to that. Sharks will attack anyone, but it just makes you feel a tiny bit better having a boy barrier. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Look, Kathy, the show obviously is called Why Do You Think You Could Do That? You've had such an amazing career to date, and clearly a lot more to come. You have made so much fun out of taboo subjects, and you've obviously been put up on a pedestal at times, but also shot down in flames, or many have tried to shoot you down in flames. So the question, obviously, Kathy, is why did you think you could do that? Why do you think you could do all of this, make a career out of it, be such a high-profile feminist, and try to change people's lives? Why you?
Well, first of all, I just felt such a great sense of injustice for women, and it infuriated me. And with 3 sisters, I wanted to make the world better for them as well. So it was that, wanting to actually make a noise about the way women were treated. And that's always been a burning ambition of mine, and I can't help it. I mean, it's just comes as natural to me as breathing. And I suppose because my mother is a feminist and as I told you, had a good career. So I had a fantastic role model in her and in her mother, who her teaching life was a vocation. So I guess it's just a sense of injustice. So I really just write for revenge. I mean, I like to impale enemies on the end of my pen. They say poetic. I was married to a lawyer for 28 years, but I think poetic justice is the only true justice in the world, that you can get your revenge by making people laugh at the foibles of your enemies. So I guess, a lot of writers say, "Oh, I write, to make." My muse descends from the heavens, and they have all this airy fairy about why they write revenge, Sam, revenge. And when women get equal pay, and when the world has parity, I will probably not feel the urge to write these novels. But until then, I mean, for God's sake, if only men would just take a year off. Let women run the world just for a year. Go play golf, go and swim, do whatever you like. Just give us 1 year to make the world more equal and female friendly. I mean, I don't think that's asking for a lot. And sometimes men say to me, "Oh, you feminists want so much." And I go, "Do we? Equal pay, that'd be nice. We'd like you to work out that Mutual Orgasm's not an insurance company. That'd be great. We'd like you to help more around the house, which is actually in your interest, as it's scientifically proven no woman ever shot a husband while he's vacuuming. And we'd like you to help more in the kitchen. The way to a woman's heart is through her stomach, Sam. That's not aiming too high. Do you cook?"
Oh, I love cooking.
Right.
It's one of my favorite pastimes.
Oh, well, a man in a cooking...
There is nothing better, Kathy, than spending a day cooking in the kitchen and serving that up to your family. It's just it's a beautiful thing. There's a lot of so much joy in cooking when you recognize the purpose of it. And it's the same as your writing. You have this great purpose throughout all of your writing to champion women and champion the women's spirit, to get that equal pay, to get parity in what should be a normal thing.
Can I say, Sam, I think as a feminist, I've been saying the same things my whole life, and not enough has changed. And it's not going to change until boys join us at the barricades. We need men to be on our marches, to be there at the front line with us saying, "This is outrageous that women don't have equal pay." We really need you. And of course, Andrew Tate, that toxic man who's taking, poisoning the minds of young men and taking them into his cult. But we have to embrace them and somehow bring them into our world, because of course feminism is better for men as well. I mean, how great for a man to be liberated from the idea of having to be the breadwinner and having to be the sort of emotionally stunted, strong, all the time strong, not being able to talk about his feelings. I mean, feminism is about choice and saying, well, maybe you should be the house husband and I'll be the alpha. So it just makes the world a more open place and more just a freer way of bringing up kids and all of that. So we really need men to join us. So, Sam, I want to see you at the next march at the front, wearing.
Okay, I'll take a selfie and I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah, and handing out the cookies the biscuits that you bake.
That I baked.
Yeah, for all the women.
I'm not a baker, I'm a roaster. So I'll have to cook, pork sandwiches or something.
That's fine.
So, Kathy, along this journey, what lessons have really surprised you the most, especially about people's reactions to you and what you do?
Well, it was very tough when I moved to England because the English, see Australians as a recessive gene. I came here for love. I didn't come here because I wanted to be here. And a lot of English people have been at Oxford for so long, they've got ivy growing up the backs of their legs, and that they have a condescension chromosome. What they graduated in is advanced smugness, especially towards Aussies. And they were so unwelcoming. I came here in 1988, so a long time ago. They were so rude to me in that very British way. They don't speak English here, they speak euphemisms. So when they'd say to me, "Oh, you're Australian, so refreshing." For a while I thought that meant they liked me, and it took me a while to work out, Sam, that meant rack off, you loudmouth colonial nymphomaniac. And I'd be like, "How dare you call me loudmouth, please? I have my standards." But what I learned at that time, and that was really hard to leave my sisters and my friends and my home and my hemisphere to come to a very unwelcoming society. But what I learned, I read something that Eleanor Roosevelt wrote where she said that nobody can make you feel inferior unless you let them. And I just thought, well, I'm just not going to let them. So when they'd say something really nasty to me, I'd get out my notepad at a party and go, "Oh, that's such a bitchy line. I'm going to write that down and give it to a real villain in my next book. Thank you so much." Or if they criticized me about they'd be very condescending about our penal past. And I'd say, I'd said, "Oh, I must say what my grandma told me when I said I was moving to London." She's like, "Oh, Kath, you can't possibly go and live in England. That's where all those terrible convicts come from." And they had
I love that.
And then eventually, of course, because I didn't care what they thought about me, I learnt not to care. Eventually, they sort of grudgingly came to accept me. So that taught me a good lesson. Just, you have to not care what people think about you, and practice that, and find your tribe.
So then, Kathy, someone listening to this who is inspired by what you do, what you say, what then is one small act of courage that they could take away and start putting into practice tomorrow?
Say what they're thinking. Just say it. Don't think it. Say it and then do it. And remember that your female friends are your human wonder bras, uplifting, supportive, and making each other look bigger and better. Get your human wonder bras around you, and you will just see how uplifted you feel. Let your cups runneth over with love. I'm wearing a wonder bra now, Sam. It's so cool because when you take it off, you wonder where the hell your tits went. So never wonder where your feet are gone. Keep each other close and draw strength from each other. So I guess my message is sisterhood. Find your female friends. Be loyal, be loving, and lift each other up.
So then someone listening who thinks that they can't be brave like Kathy Lette, what would you say to them?
Well, as I said earlier, if not now, when? What have you got to lose? You've got to learn to. So someone can always say no, but if you don't ask, you don't get. And it took me a long time to learn that too, because I was too polite, being female, pulling back. But, men are much better at asking for what they want. They call it women have the princess syndrome where they'll work really hard and they'll sit working. They'll think someone must notice how hard I'm working and they're going to come out and give me a tiara. Whereas men will kick down the door, go into the boss and say, I'm fabulous. Where's my crown? We have to learn to lean in, as Sheryl Sandberg said, lean in, ask for what we want and not be afraid of rejection. And if they say no, just go and ask somebody else.
So do you find it easy to keep pushing forward each day to, some people might say making outrageous comments and, talking about taboo subjects? Does it come naturally or do you have to keep pushing it?
Gosh.
Sometimes you need to pick it up from inside.
No. And also, I don't go around thinking, oh, what outrageous thing can I say today? I just try and speak.
No, you may not think it, but I'm sure others might.
I just try and speak truth to power. And we live in a patriarchal world. And if that means blowing raspberries at the patriarchy on a daily basis, that I will do. But of course, I have many male friends who are fabulous. I'm not being sexist about this. But I just think keep blowing raspberries and pointing out that certain emperors certainly have no clothes on. And that's my whole literary raison d'etre. Yeah.
Now, Kathy, I always love to finish every interview with what I call the Brave Five. It's 5 questions. One doesn't lead on to the other. You ready?
No, I don't know. Let's see. I've only had 1 coffee this morning. I might need 2.
See, it's almost 7 o'clock here, so it's almost champagne time.
At 1 o'clock, you lucky thing.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what was or what is the most unexpected takeaway from your writing career so far?
I was writer in residence at the Savoy Hotel, which was also better than winning the Booker Prize. I've got my own cocktail there called Kathy.
I know, that's fantastic.
No, I've got my own dish on the menu called Kathy Omelette, obviously, and it's a lobster omelette because I do have quite good legs. It's the only thing I've got left. So lobster omelette with little legs sticking out. That was quite fabulous. So I think that was a really good surprise. And also, I've got a lot of honorary doctorates now. My mother was so upset when I left school so young, but I've now got 3 honorary doctorates. So that was the one I really want, Sam. There's one called a Companion of Literature. And you know how they abbreviate it? C.Lit.
Oh, you need that.
Hello.
That is you. That has you written all over it, doesn't it?
That would rub me up the right way.
All right. The second question, what's the first emotion you felt when Puberty Blues exploded into controversy?
Overawed, staggered, stunned, no idea. It was only written for girlfriends, and suddenly it just erupted like Vesuvius. So yeah, overawed, but also I suppose thrilled that the message was getting out there, that it resonated in such a big way.
Did you revel in it, or did you want to shy away from the spotlight?
Shy away. It was frightening. It was very frightening. I was only a teenager, but luckily I wrote it with a girlfriend, so we had each other. We had the Human Wonder Bras. We were very solid friends, and that cushioned a lot of the blows that came along with the accolades. Yeah.
So what's one thing that you wish you knew before you published Puberty Blues?
To ask for more money. We sold the film rights. We knew we had to get an agent because we knew we weren't stupid, so we got an agent at Curtis Brown, but he read the book and just thought it was rubbish, So we talk about the patriarchy. He didn't get it at all, and we sold the rights for $500 with no escalation clause. It went on to be the biggest box office grossing movie of its time. We made absolutely no money out of it. So even when we thought we were doing the right thing, we should have had a female agent who would have got it. So yeah, we were writing about the patriarchy and we were being diddled by the patriarchy at the same time.
So Fourth question in the rapid fire 5, Kathy. What is a habit or a mindset that has really made the biggest difference to you?
Always find the funny. Laughter is the best medicine. It will cure all. So no matter how grim, how grey, how gruesome, laugh your way out of it. And that's what your girlfriends are for.
Wonderful. And now the last question in the rapid fire 5. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received about writing or even just life?
Well, it's not piece of advice I received. It's something that I believe is that, optimism is not an eye disease. Be positive. Go out every day with a positive attitude and never turn down an adventure.
Yeah, wonderful. So this is something that I always like to ask only some of my guests, Kathy, and it's all to do with bravery, because you've obviously shown bravery all the way through your career. When did you need bravery the most?
I think when my son was diagnosed with autism, that was really, it was very lonely, and I felt I was just cast adrift. But I have 3 loving sisters and wonderful parents, so I could lean into them. Unfortunately, they were on the other side of the world. I was in England and they were over there. But that's when I had to really dig deep and find my resilience. Yeah, I think that was the toughest time in my life, being far from home and terrified about this A word, this autism label. I mean, I now think a label is just something on the side of a jam jar, and normal's just a setting on a washing machine. But at the time, I didn't know that, and that was a very big battle for me to protect my son. That you get this kind of lioness love comes out in you, but I had no manual. There's no owner's manual for an autistic child, and that was really hard. And that's why I wrote The Boy Who Fell to Earth as a manual for other mothers and fathers, so that they could find the funny they could find the light in a very dark time.
So then what does bravery mean to you?
Bravery means to me having a leg wax or a bikini wax. Like, why? No, bravery means to me being true to yourself and having the courage of your convictions. Maybe I have the courage of my convictions because I'm convict stock. My
Yes,
ancestors,
that's it.
yeah, my ancestors went out on the First and Second Fleet to Australia. So I am, how we have inverted snobbery in Australia. If you can trace yourself back to the convicts, that's like your Antipodean royalty. So I am the creme de la creme, Sam.
Yeah, and now you're living where all the criminals came from.
That's right, exactly. I know, ironic, isn't it? But I come back to Australia 3 or 4 months a year, and I'm trying to swap it round. I've got to be here for my autistic son a lot of the time. That's why I can't spend more time. But I'm trying to make it that we move to Australia and we just come back to England for 3 months for the summer because it's so much fun. I've got so many great friends here now. But I'm
Fantastic.
through and through, as you can see.
Kathy Lette didn't just write about surfing, sex and teenage rebellion. She surfed the outrage, turned taboo into comedy, and showed us that the smartest rebellion can come wrapped in a joke. Her story reminds us that bravery doesn't always mean charging into battle or scaling Everest. Sometimes it means writing down the truth about your world at 17 and refusing to apologise when the world tells you to be quiet. It looks like standing up to critics with a laugh instead of an apology. It looks like proving that every story matters, especially the ones that society tries to hush up. Maybe you'll never write a book called How to Kill Your Husband, but we all face our own taboos, our own moments when society tells us to stay silent. The question isn't whether you could do what Kathy did. The question is, will you tell the truth, even when it feels impossible? Now, Kathy, for those who want to keep laughing and learning with you, where's the best place for them to find your work?
Well, they can follow me on Twitter at Kathy Lette or on Instagram, Kathy Lette. Surprise, surprise. And they can just flip between my book covers. Satisfaction guaranteed. just find my books online, whatever. If there's 20 novels out there, there's bound to be one that speaks to the stage you're going through right now. And to the men too, I would say, if you want to know how women talk when you're not around, this will be very educational for you. But I would say
Fantastic.
read at your own risk.
Oh, geez. I'll make sure I put all of those links into the show notes. And if this conversation has made you laugh, think, or even squirm, share it with someone else, because bravery spreads and so does humour. I'm Sam Penny, and this is Why Do You Think You Could Do That? Until next time, keep saying yes to the impossible.